Hello, hello, Generation In Between. This is our first episode of our Xennial Girl Summer.
Yay!
We are going to have several episodes where we talk about books and movies.
Yep.
From the 80s and 90s. We have a list of 4 books we're going to read this summer and 4 movies we're going to watch. You can find it on our socials.
Yep.
Go check it out. That you can read along with us or watch along with us, and you'll see the dates that the episodes are going to go live.
Yes.
It's also good for us. It's going to make us record them and issue them on those days.
On the correct days. TBD, but it's okay. No, I think we've got it. And this is our kickoff.
This is our kickoff
to Xennial Girl Summer.
And so we had to start with a book that is a Xennial Girl classic, and it has been a classic not just for Xennials, but across generations since it came out, and that is the book Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume, who is amazing.
Yes.
Literally, I just watched her documentary. There's a documentary on Netflix called Judy Blume Forever, or Forever Judy Blume, one of the ways of that. It's so good. You have to watch it.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
It's so good. Also, she has a bookstore in Key West she's there. You can go and meet her. And you can call the bookstore and be like, is Judy in today? And they're like, oh yeah, Judy will be here from 11 to 2. And you can just pop in and she just chit chats. So one day, maybe we'll make it down there.
I love that. Xennial Girl road trip.
Maybe.
It's a road trip for us. It's 6 hours, 6 or 7 hours.
Okay.
It's a long road trip.
That's long.
This state is huge.
My car has karaoke.
Yeah. Okay. Could we get 6 or 7 hours on one charge?
No. I'd have to stop and charge. And I'll have a better idea of how often when Caden and I drive to Florida State,
which is 6 hours.
Yeah, which is 6 hours. So I don't know. I haven't driven it long distances yet, but it's cool because you can plan out. It can tell you where all the supercharge stations are, so you can plan out your route so you can charge along the way.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But so we'll figure it out.
Yeah. We'll go see Judy Blume.
We'll figure it out. Okay. So here we go. I'm going to give a little background and then we're just going to talk about the book. We did both read it.
Yes.
Not very long. This is the shortest of our book selection.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret here's the summary, is a coming of age novel by Judy Blume, first published in 1970.
Really?
Yeah, it's got staying power. It tells the story of Margaret Simon, a 12-year-old girl navigating the complexities of puberty, religious identity, and friendships during her 6th grade year. The novel explores themes of interfaith family life, the search for religious meaning, and the challenges of adolescence.
Love that.
I know.
Great summary.
I know, it is I didn't write it. So,
but that's it. Whoever wrote that.
Good
job, summary writer.
So, I think, first of all, before we jump into too much other stuff, the fact that it was published in 1970 and 12-year-olds are still reading it now in 2025 and it still feels pretty relevant, that's something to be said of the writing of Judy Blume.
Yes, I totally agree. So I don't know if you know this or not. How old was Judy Blume when she wrote this book?
She was this was her 3rd published book.
Okay.
I'm not sure. It was her 3rd published book. She had 2 prior, but she said this one she felt like was her first real book.
If we're talking this was published 55 years ago,
we could probably Google it real quick.
I'm just saying, she was probably, obviously she wasn't 12, but she was young.
Yeah.
I'll just look up when her birthday was and then we'll know.
Then we'll figure it out. Well, so anyway, she said it was her first real book. This is her quote. The book where I just let go. I didn't know what I was doing. I just did it. You could probably understand that.
God, I feel
that. She said, and this is what came out. So
1938, she was born.
Okay.
Wow.
I think she's 80 something now. Yeah. She's in her 80s.
Yeah. My goodness.
Yeah.
You go, Judy Blume.
Anyway, so she said the characters in the story are based on a combination of herself and her friends at age 12. So
I like that.
She said of all the characters she's ever written about, Margaret is one of the most autobiographical.
Okay.
So
she would have been 32 when this book came out.
Young.
Yeah, pretty young.
Yeah, pretty young. That's her 3rd book too.
You know what's funny is I do in my brain intertwine who I believe Judy Blume to maybe be and Margaret.
Yeah.
So that's funny that she says that.
Yeah.
And I think this was my first Judy Blume book I ever read, I think. And so that voice, because Margaret's telling, you see it through her storytelling, to me sort of became synonymous with Judy Blume.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's why this book has had such staying power, is because there's so much of herself in it.
I like how she said she just let go.
Yeah.
I'm doing that a little bit myself with my first book that's going to be published. And I was writing yesterday, and there's always like do I want to write about that thing? And so I've just let myself write it all. And I'm like, I can edit later.
Oh, yeah.
But if that thought comes to me when I'm writing and I want to tell that story or delve into that thing, don't let it be like, do I want to do it? It's what is anyone going to think? Just like write it. And then you can always go back and be like, I don't know if I wanted to say that, or that didn't come out right, or whatever. I don't know if I want to tell this story. Totally fine. But I like how she said she just kind of let go.
Just let go. And she said, this is what came out.
This is it. This is what came out.
The first draft of the book she wrote in 6 weeks.
Okay.
Isn't that crazy? 6 weeks, the first draft.
Yeah, okay. But still. I'm guessing the final version was probably close-ish to the first draft.
Yeah.
And that's what's great about it is, so I reread some, and then I also listened to some on audiobook. So I kind of toggled. And I think on audiobook especially, you realize how simply constructed some of the writing is. And I don't mean like the ideas are simple, but it's a simple delivery.
Yeah.
Because it is a 12-year-old.
12-year-old. Yeah, 12-year-old girl.
And that makes it great because you don't have to overthink what she's saying. She just says what she's thinking. And this idea that she's talking to God, or kind of not sort of talking to herself in a way, makes it so her real thoughts are being shared, right? Not the things she's going to actually share with the world, but as the reader or the listener, you're getting that inner monologue, which I think is really smart.
Oh, yeah.
That was a really smart way
Absolutely.
to write this.
So we're going to jump in right away. That a lot of times when people hear the name of this book, they think about the controversy that has come around it in the years since it's come out. And the reason it's been considered controversial is because it talks very directly, like you said, very simply, very directly about things like puberty, questioning religion, and sexual curiosity. All normal things for 12-year-old kids to experience.
Yes.
And there's no like shame around it. There's no like guarded language. She just says it.
Right.
And here's what she said about it. She did an interview a few years back. And she said, I just wanted to be real. I wanted to be honest. I was small and not developed, and everything came later to me. She was a late bloomer. So this was what I wanted desperately, and so does Margaret. To me, there was nothing wrong with thinking about getting your period and wanting your breasts to grow. It wasn't controversial in my mind. It was just true. Because most girls go through that.
Yeah. And even if it's not those, let's say those
exact things, correct.
It's something to do with growing
your bodies.
Or your body, or how you look, or comparing yourself to the people around you and your peers. And I'm sure boys as well have their own version of that they go through. We're seeing this through the eyes of a 12-year-old girl. But so things like period and bra size are part of that. But I think, and I just think even as an adult, that relatable feeling where it feels like everyone around you is doing better than you, or people like them more than you, or they are better than you, or you're not doing enough, or something's wrong with you, is something like, as humans, we don't ever really shed. Maybe as we get a little older, and we've talked about being in your 40s and just been like, whatever about everything. But it's kind of innate to who we are.
Yeah.
And even reading about a 12-year-old, you're like, yeah, I felt like that then. But I still feel like that now sometimes.
Correct. I can remember, I remember getting my first training bra. I remember everybody starting to get their periods. And I got mine young. But I had friends who were late bloomers, and they were so stressed about it. And I was on the other side of the fence, like, God, I wish I did not have this period. Like, you know what I mean? And it's so funny. I hate that like you can't talk about periods
right
without people cringing.
Yeah.
It's fucking stupid. And it's patriarchy 100%.
Oh, 100%.
And
yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, you put that in a book and people are like, oh, it's like, hello, it's part of your natural body.
Right. And what was that movie just like a couple years ago, Turning Red?
Oh, yeah.
Where she talks about
it was
her
great.
period, and people were all upset about
They're
that.
all fucking freaking out.
And it's like, this is an age appropriate way to talk about this thing, you know?
And it is for you out there who are listening who are not in a body that has periods. It is like this stressful thing on whatever end you're on when people start getting it. Cause then you're like, wait, I got mine too soon, or I got mine too late, or everybody else has theirs.
Or when's it going to happen?
When's it going to happen? Yeah. And it's stressful. And now we kind of live in a time where I feel like it is a little more celebrated. You know, they have those like period parties and like, you know, our friend Jamila, who's been on here, made these really cool period kits. So for fun. Like a girl's first period to kind of celebrate like this next phase of life. But we didn't have that, especially when this book was written.
Yeah.
It was like secret and hush hush and
right. And just you and your mom in the bedroom with the door shut, like talking about it or whatever. My first daughter that got her period, obviously she already knew about all of that before it even happened, but like I helped with that. And then from now on, I'm like, all right, help your sisters.
Yeah.
So then when the next one happened, I'm like, go talk to your sister.
They'd much rather
and then
talk
the next
to their
one,
sister
I'm
than
like,
their
go
mom.
talk to your sister, you know, to the point that my third one, the other two made her, I mean, it was a shoebox and filled it with stuff and like gave it to her, you know, to have. And she still has it in her room. Like she pulls stuff out of it when she needs it, you know? And so it is one of those things. And we do talk just frankly about it. And the people in our
got a lot of girls
who
in
do
your
not
house
have a body that has a period. They don't even like, they're just like there when we're talking about it.
Here's
they're
the
like,
thing.
okay.
Men need to understand how women's bodies work too. I mean, you need to understand how bodies work in general, no matter what gender you identify with or what sexual preference you have. You need to understand human bodies of all shapes, sizes, forms. And it's so funny because a few years back, I realized my husband did not understand a tampon in its entirety. Yeah. And I'm like, you are in, and listen, I'm not making fun of him. It's not really his fault. I was like, you are in your mid 40s, or maybe it was his early 40s at this point. I was like, we're going to have a conversation about this. And I need to make sure my kids know, like, cause whether or not they're going to marry women or not marry any women at all, they're going to have women in their life and they need to understand what's going on. And I remember one of my kids had a very weird, I won't say which one because that's their business, but I told them I'd rather you ask me about things than like try and go Google. Like, I'd rather you ask me and I will tell you an age appropriate answer if it's time for that.
Yes.
Okay. So one of them said to me, well, I'm confused about periods. They literally thought,
oh no.
They were young. So they literally thought blood shot out of a vagina. Like pew pew.
Like projectile vomit.
Projectile
blood.
Menstrual flow.
Aw.
I know.
Well, that probably was terrifying to think about.
So I had to quickly say, no, it more kind of drips out. And if you're listening and you didn't know, we'll tell you now.
Tell you right now. Well, like they say in the book, she said it feels like, who is it? Is it Gretchen or Janie that gets it first?
I don't remember.
I feel like it's Gretchen. And then she's like, and Nancy's like, well, what's this? You got to tell us everything, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, it just feels like nothing. Or if you feel anything, it feels like dripping.
Yeah, it feels like dripping. I mean, sometimes it feels like more than dripping.
Although they kind of underplayed. And I mean, I think
cramps.
when you're young,
the
pain part, they're like, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't whatever. And I was like, girl, but at that age, maybe not so much.
The thing is too, we have to I feel like that is important to recognize is everyone's body reacts differently to menstrual cycles.
Yes, so that's true.
Everyone's does. And at different ages, your body does different things. I mean, when I was young, mine were awful, painful. Like I would miss school every month. And then I had to get on like medicine to help that. But I think for most girls at that young age, it's probably not like what I went through.
Right.
So Anyway, so speaking of periods.
Yes.
So speaking of controversy in banned books, this book has earned almost a permanent spot on the American Library Association's list of challenge books.
Wow.
Almost. There's a few years it's not on there and then it comes back.
Okay.
So here's interesting. When the book was published, Judy Blume was so excited. She gave 3 copies to her children's elementary school at the time. Mm-hmm. And they were never put on the shelves. Yeah. Judy said on her blog a few years back, this is what she said. The male principal decided that the book was inappropriate because of the discussion of menstruation. Never mind how many 5th and 6th graders already had their periods. And that was her first experience with a book being banned, her book being banned.
In her like personal life.
Mm-hmm.
Man, you know what? That's inspiring though. I mean, think about it. You kind of just can't let the opinions of anyone sway you.
Right.
Because that would be one where it's like, it's very personal. It involves your children.
Correct.
And their teachers and administrators who are basically saying that your book's not good enough or is somehow inappropriate to put on their shelves.
Yeah.
So imagine if like that deterred you and all the millions and millions of copies that this book has sold. And as you mentioned, people are still reading it.
Oh my gosh,
yeah. It has sparked. You know, that's, again, maybe it's just because I'm like, oh, I'm writing a book. And you just have to, even if there's someone close to you that doesn't agree with what you wrote, if you in your heart know that that was what, whether it's a book, whether it's a blog, whether it's just something you said out loud, if you stand by that, then what you're saying has value.
Of course.
And it is going to reach the right people, unless they don't put it on the shelf and then the people don't get to see it. But, you know, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, too, that she made sure to say the male principal.
Yeah.
Because there's like, oh, menstruation. Rah. Like, you know, men have been trying to control talk about women's bodies and what happens to women's bodies since the dawn of time. Mm-hmm. I mean, have you ever read that book, The Red Tent?
No, I haven't read that one.
Well, it's basically like that's where they would shove the women when they were menstruating or having babies. They just shoved them all in a red tent, but they turned it into this place where women could be open with each other. And anyway, but like but it's so interesting because it's like, well, instead of just using this book as a way to discuss real life, it's like, let's just shove it away and pretend like it doesn't exist.
Right.
And make girls feel like that's something to be ashamed of.
And to shove away and not discuss or write about.
Or that it's gross or nasty or whatever.
Right.
Like, it's none of those things. Well, you may have personal feelings.
Yeah, like you might be like, I feel
gross, but it's not gross in itself. It's just a bodily thing that has to happen for
and you can't
our civilization to continue.
And you can't control it even if you wanted to.
I mean, you can, but it still happens.
There's ways, but I'm just saying, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
So the book is from 1970, and it's actually had a few little modern edits.
Oh, interesting.
But not many.
Okay.
The main one was it still takes place in the 70s, but the main edit that I found was that pads are used now, like the sticky maxi pads, instead of in the original book. I don't know if you remember this from when you were a kid. They had the sanitary napkins with the belts.
I remember that.
Because for those of you that don't know, because you might be young and you may not realize this, but maxi pads that like stick on underwear now, those weren't invented until the 80s, I think.
Something like that.
And so the way you used to have to deal with it was such a mess. Look it up on Google to see what women had to fucking deal with.
Right.
You would have to wear this belt around your waist and it would hook. It would have these little hooks that would keep the thing on your underwear, the pad.
Thankfully, I never had to deal with that.
We by the
had
time
the sticky by the 90s or whatever. We had our sticky ones, but I remember that now that because the one I just reread is a modern one that I got from the library, and the audiobook is the modern version. I mean, it's the same version, but with the edits. And so I didn't hear that. And now that you say that, I remember reading it before I got my period and wondering like how that was going to work.
I remember asking, because like I have a sister who's 7 years older than me. Okay. So like I knew about periods real early on just because the shit was everywhere. Right.
Sure.
And my mom's a nurse. So like everything was medical. And I don't like medical things. So they would have to force me to hear about things. Anyway, I remember asking about this, whether I asked my sister or my mom when I read this book, like, what in the world? Belts. And they explained to me, because there was no Google, guys. Like we couldn't just Google it on a laptop or our phones. And God, what a pain in the ass.
Huge pain.
Yeah.
Not good.
And they also, in the book, The Modern Update, they mentioned tampons as well, which also weren't a prevalent thing. So.
Right. Yeah, you're right. They do talk about those.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, the only last little bit of thing I have before I have some discussion questions.
Yay.
When they did make the movie a couple years back in 2023, Judy Blume was actually one of the producers.
Oh, good.
But people had been approaching her for years to make a film version of this book. And she was like, no. She said it just didn't feel right. And then she finally met with the people and she was like, okay, yeah, I want to be a part of this.
I saw the movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen the movie.
I saw it in the theater, and it was really good.
Good. I need to watch it.
I really enjoyed it. Rachel McAdams was the mom, which was sort of disconcerting.
I know, right?
Because I was like, I think of her as young.
I know.
Or like, I mean, she's older than us, I think, or maybe.
I think she's our age.
I think she's our age. And I mean, I'm a mom to kids that age, so it's not that big a deal, but it kind of threw me off for a second.
I know.
She was just in like jeans and a t-shirt, and I'm just used to her, I don't know, Regina George or The Notebook or whatever. But she was great.
Okay.
And the little girl who played Margaret was fantastic. And I think for the most part, they kept to the book. You know, anything for a movie, you got to cut a few little side stories. Oh,
I'm so sorry. I just kicked the laptop stand.
Sorry. I'm surprised we haven't done that yet.
Well, it
always
happened
a
today.
First time.
Sorry, guys.
There was a little earthquake. Okay. Well, we're good. The earthquake was Danny.
I'm trying to keep my blood circulating in my legs.
Yeah, we've been here a while. So I get that. So all that to say, if you haven't seen the movie, you definitely should watch it. I think it does. And it makes sense that she was a producer on it because it definitely does justice to the story. I think it does.
Okay.
All right. Cool.
All right. Well, so I got a few discussion questions. Most of the ones I found are like for young kids. Not young, but for like, 12, 13, 14-year-olds. That didn't really, it would have been weird for us to answer them. So I just got a few, and obviously it'll spark discussion for other things. Like Katie and I did not take notes when we read the book. We just read it. Mm-mm. So it's kind of like we're at a book club and we're going to just talk about the book. So this one I want to talk about because I thought this was so interesting in the whole book, especially I remember thinking it was interesting as a kid and then as an adult still finding it interesting. So here's the first one. Why do you think Margaret is so interested in religion? Why does she talk to God even though her parents don't practice a religion? We'll talk about the rest of it in a minute.
Okay. Yeah, that is an interesting view. I don't know the answer to that.
I remember thinking how fascinating it was when I was a kid because I grew up going to, a Methodist church. Parents, were practicing Christians. And I didn't really know anybody else who was another religion until later. Mm-hmm. But I remember thinking when I was a kid reading it, it was interesting how her parents had both. Like she had influences of both, but they chose nothing. And I appreciated their stance on saying it's up to you to choose when you're older what you want to follow. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if they did the same thing in the movie, but
they did.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the same.
I think she's so interested in it because she's 12 and you want to know about things.
Yeah.
And her parents have let her be curious.
Sure. Yeah, so I think she's curious about God in whatever form that is. Not necessarily God associated with a religion.
Right.
But this idea there's a being out there kind of maybe looking out for you or that in a way could control things because that's certainly something you want at that age. And any kid wants is that reassurance that something out there's got your back, that something's going to keep you safe, that something has the answers that you don't have or maybe your parents don't have or your friends don't have. It always kind of had reminded me, and definitely when I reread it this time, of like a Dear Diary.
Yes,
but Dear Diary is a little different because you're really talking to yourself. And you know that.
Well,
you're getting it on paper. Or you're just pissed like Danny and you're mad at everybody else.
I did like a lot of boys though. So
you did like a lot of boys.
I know.
But she tells God about the boys she likes.
That's right. Which here's what I really liked about the way I agree with you. I think she's I don't know if she's really even talking to God.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just, and I appreciated the times where she's like, please God, just let my period come. Or like, you know, because sometimes I remember even as an adult treating praying as like a wish.
Oh, sure.
Almost.
Oh, sure.
Like here's my wish list.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and check that off for me, Mr. Genie up there.
Right.
But I love that she was just so honest.
Yes.
You know?
Which is a really, at its core, a very wholesome, pure view of God.
Yeah.
That you can bring God, whatever that looks like to you, your true self. And be your true self with God. And have no judgment, like literally no response, you know? Like it's just sort of putting it there. And I like that. I know when I was growing up, when we would say prayers out loud, my dad would always say, the first thing you do is pray for someone else. Like, kind of like that wish list situation that you're talking about. So like something, whether someone's sick or just want them to have a good day, or whether it's your sibling or your parents or a friend or a teacher or a grandparent. And then it's almost like once you've done that, then the things you pray for have a different perspective on them, you know, which I always kind of appreciated, I guess. But I think her view of God, like you said, I don't think it's believing in God necessarily. It's more just like having that thing to vent to. That I think, and like you said, her parents aren't saying to her, there is no God.
Right. They're saying there's
nothing out there. Yeah. They're saying, we've decided to step away from organized religion and we're just going to raise you neutrally. And then whatever direction you take.
And they were okay with her going to church with her friends or her grandma.
When she wanted to go to temple with her grandma, and then when she wanted to go to church with her friends, they were fine with that, you know, which I thought was good.
I think that's a really good stance on religion as someone who used to be on the other side of things with my kids. You know, where you're like, make them go to church,
right?
Make them do the classes, make them do the things. I think it's a lot smarter to kind of leave it open, give them the resources if they want them, which a lot of people don't like because they're like, well, they're kids. Yeah, I get it. I know. I don't know. The older I get, the more broad my worldview and my opinions on everything kind of gets. Yeah. And I hope that the older they get, they also feel like that. But when you're young, it's hard to think abstractly. You want to think in black and white. You want something to be this or that. And I think maybe Margaret was trying to find that, you know?
I think so. Definitely. And, you know, religion or belief in something outside of what we can see does come with kind of a structure of its own, a being you can go to in those moments when you feel like you can't talk to your parents or your friends. And, you know, she's an only child, like there's not a sibling component there. So I think that's interesting. And what I really liked too is the parents, even though there's like that part in the book where the dad's kind of mad at the mom for sending a Christmas card to her parents, but that's real life. Like married people have disagreements, but I liked that they were just so on the same team with everything that had to do with Margaret. Everything, but certainly the religion stuff, that it wasn't a big deal. And neither one questioned the other. And it was just like, this is how we're together raising our child. And I thought that was really, even in the moments when like Sylvia, the Jewish grandmother, was involved, or the Christian grandparents from Ohio, as a unit, the two of them didn't change their stance.
Yeah.
And didn't throw each other under the bus. It was like, no. Or when people were like, oh, she doesn't go to Sunday school or whatever, they were like, no. Yeah. You know, like oh, well, that's what we believe, you know? So I just thought that
in
was
the
cool.
1970s,
yeah,
that's pretty radical. I mean, well, in this, where they were living, I don't mean like everywhere in the world.
Right.
And they were like living in a suburban community of, you know, a waspy area.
Well, and like the other moms kind of being like, oh, your mom paints.
And they're like, on Wednesdays we do this, and on Mondays we do this, and on Sundays we carpool. And I'm like, Jesus, I've lived that life. Y'all don't even know. Y'all don't even know.
In the movie, they go into the mom's story a little more.
Oh, okay.
Which is great. Not that there's additions to the story, but she does go to a PTA meeting or two. There are parts where she's feeling, well, first she's in a new space where she's feeling kind of like an other, an outsider, but always comes back to who she is. And they really did a good job with that in the movie, I think, kind of painting her as more of a whole person, I think, and like that she was struggling with some things at the time as well. And I thought that was really good, because then in the moments when her and Margaret are both struggling together, I don't know, it was done really well.
Well, I'm gonna have to watch it. Well, speaking of the mom, here's your next question.
Okay.
My battery's going to die at some point. In what ways do Margaret's parents play stereotypical gender roles? And how do Margaret and her friends buy into these stereotypes about how girls should act and look? Here's another part of it. How and why do some of the boys at school emphasize stereotypical expectations about female bodies?
Yeah. Oof.
Lots there.
So the stereotypical gender roles,
I'm going to plug in my computer.
Okay.
Keep talking.
Well, first of all, the mom, she's a stay-at-home mom. Yeah. They live, and she kind of gave up her career / whatever, which was art and painting, to be mom so that dad can go work the corporate job in the city, but they can live a suburban life. So there's that. There's also in the book, they do this, but they didn't really talk about it that much in the movie, where the mom has to kind of convince the dad to buy another car. Do you remember that part? So it comes up a few times, and Margaret's always like, but I know she'll get her way. She always does. She has a way with my dad or whatever.
Yes.
She could get up early to take him to the bus stop, which is what he pointed out.
Right.
But no, she's going to end up with her own car. And I was just kind of like, I mean, if the family needs a car, the family needs a car. It's not like mom should be like pleading her case for that, especially if that's the decision you've made in your family, that right now that's where she's, going to be in charge during the day, is the home and the car and the child and all the things. Give her the car.
Yeah.
So I thought that was one that really stood out. And I don't know, otherwise I didn't think it was too bad. I think there's a part where the dad's cooking. I mean, there were a few things in there.
I think it's funny in the book because the girls dress, they wear the little dresses and skirts, and like I wish I would have wrote down more.
Yeah.
But since we're already there about talking about girls and bodies, is the stereotypes they have placed upon that one young lady,
Laura,
who has developed early. And it's so unfortunate because I remember girls who developed earlier automatically had this persona placed upon them.
Yep.
Some of them didn't know what to do, except, and I can look at this in hindsight now, didn't know what to do except play into it.
Sure.
And some were just like Laura and just so embarrassed and like shy and like, they create this whole narrative around her that she goes behind the A&P with boys because she has boobs. Like,
yeah. How is that correlated? Yeah. And when it finally comes to a head, right, when Margaret says something to her, and everything that Laura says back is so wholesome and like, oh, wait, she's also 12 and inexperienced, and the way her body looks has nothing to do with anything.
Yes.
And essentially she says that. She's like, do you think it's easy to be bigger and to be more developed and to look older? Like, it's not. And even as a kid, I remember I know that sort of stereotype in the book, and then that conversation with Margaret has always stuck with me. Because I remember middle school and early high school, if there was talk of a girl's body that way or something, that I automatically would resist that and be like, well, that's not right. And maybe I would have anyway, but I know reading this book had something to do with that. Had something to do with me, my critical thinking going, oh, that's like Laura. And that was really sad because everyone was mean to her and she didn't have friends and the boys were lying about her. And hey, maybe boys are lying about this girl too. Or even if they're not, like, you know what I mean? Like, just kind of being like, a body's a body and they're all different.
Well, I think too, a lot of the stuff that girls say is because they're jealous.
Oh, of course. Well,
you know,
they want the boobs and they want their period and they want the boys to notice them and they want to be tall. But then Laura's like, I want to look like you.
Yeah, but she's like, all you want is to blend in, is to fit in.
You don't want to stand out. Yeah.
You know, like you just, until you get to a point where you want to stand out, right?
Sure.
But middle school is that time.
You're like,
everybody's awkward. Everybody's bodies are doing weird stuff.
Totally.
You're either waiting for something to happen or you're freaking out because something's happening. You know, it's just like such a weird, awkward time, which is why I think Judy Blume wrote from a 12-year-old girl's perspective, is because it is such a weird time.
It is. Like, if she was in grade school, for example, I guess she technically is in 6th grade, but if she was 3rd or 4th grade, or if she was 9th or 10th grade,
it's different.
It would be a totally different perspective.
Those few years are like, and we both have kids, you know, in that time. And it's just a weird, you literally could not pay me to go back and live that again.
Not those years. No,
never, ever, ever.
No,
again.
Ma'am.
Yeah. But I do think, okay, so let's talk about their little, we must increase our best.
Okay.
That's also a hard thing because I feel like the idea of what makes somebody a female, right? They're like, oh, we have to have boobs. We have to have whatever. That's super antiquated in this book, right?
Sure.
And I can remember thinking like, oh, I got to have, you know, whatever boobs to be considered pretty or whatever. And you don't.
You don't. It's antiquated, but I also, one thing I really thought of this time when I was reading that is that there is an excitement around that.
No, and there is. And that's the other side of the coin, is that all girls are excited to become women.
Yes.
Right?
And what goes with that? I mean, it's hard to be a woman, and that starts from girlhood, you know? So to then be excited about getting the bra or noticing that you have boobs or curves or your period or whatever, all these things. Yes, I think it's definitely antiquated. And like in that example of we must increase our bust, it's like one girl's idea that everyone then has to do. So that's different than you just being like, oh, I wish my boobs would grow a little bit.
Well, and then I think about people too, like our trans friends, right? Who that's the beginning of a really hard time.
Yeah.
Because you are in a body that's not what you feel on the inside. You feel trapped. And that's kind of when it starts, is because now your body's doing all these changes and it's like, oh no, like this. But now I was thinking about that a lot in this book. Things I never would have thought about then.
Sure.
That I'm interested to see if they wrote a similar book along these same lines now, how they would address some, you know, if they did it from a different point of view. And there are books out there like that. I mean, I'm not saying there's not. There are books like out there from different perspectives. But I think too, it's that, I think maybe what it is that being a female looks one certain way.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Which you really feel in this book. But I will say it's sort of perpetuated by the characters that you kind of don't like as well.
Yeah.
So like the Nancys. And I actually did write a little note. I said, is Nancy okay? Because that's literally what I wrote. Because, so if you haven't read the book in a while and, you know, keeping track of all the names, Nancy's the little neighbor who invites her to come run through the sprinklers the first day she's there and and she's very worried about clothes and clubs and not wearing socks and getting boobs, and the we must increase our bust is her idea, and this club, and they have a list
the
of
Playboy
boys,
magazine
and the Playboy magazine, yes, all the things. And I don't know, I not to like be dark, but I'm like, did something happen to Nancy? Like I had that moment where I was reading it this time and I was like, she's so hyper focused on that stuff, but I knew people like this. So, or is it just that some people are naturally more curious about these things?
It's that.
I just had a moment where I was like, ooh.
Fun fact about Nancy Wheeler. By the way, that's her name in the book. If you are a Stranger Things fan, there is a character called Nancy Wheeler.
Oh, really?
In the first season.
I love that.
But the creators of Stranger Things said, no, it is not related to this book. They were not inspired by this book.
Okay.
So that came up in my research. I was like, oh shit, I didn't even think about that, Nancy Wheeler.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. So I think, so the Playboy thing, since I said that, I did enjoy how they talked. She was just so direct about it, how she was like, oh, my dad has a subscription and it used to be here, but now I find it in his nightstand.
Like,
and like
he's hiding it now, basically.
And it's like, okay, like I can remember going to friends' houses and looking for one friend's mom had Playgirl as well. So,
yeah. And just the fascination with that.
Well, and it's normal, like, because guys, this is pre-internet. Like,
yes.
I mean, if
you're a young lady who hasn't developed those things yet, you're going to be curious about how they would look, which, like, unfortunately, like, looking at Playboy and all that is sort of like, well, no, you're not.
No, that's not
what
like a lot of people look like.
But even the girls are like,
maybe in the 70s.
Maybe. But even the girls reading it in the book were like, oh, she's kind of top heavy, isn't she?
Yeah, they're like,
she's
she doesn't look, yeah, she doesn't look right.
And they're like, oh, maybe Laura will look like that one day or whatever they said. But like and even that was presented like
just matter of fact,
even like, I used to be in the bathroom, but now I actually have to like go open a drawer to find it.
How funny is that?
The wheels are turning.
I'm just laughing. Like, it used to be in the bathroom, but now it's on the nightstand. And I'm like, oh, So like they don't really know why. Like, we know as adults. And I probably missed that as a kid as well.
I probably did too.
But I'm like, oh, that's so funny.
Because I remember, maybe don't remember, but I would imagine as a kid when I read this and that part, I was just so panicked about her getting caught. Probably. I was like, oh, is her mom going to find her? And then they like look at it and they're like, all right. And nothing happens. And I was probably just like, oh, good. They didn't get in trouble. I can just see myself. That's probably the exact internal talk I had with myself.
That's great.
At the time that I read it.
I don't know what I thought. I don't know. But anyway, okay, let me see what else we got. And then we probably have to shut it down soon. Okay. Okay, this is a good one to end on. 2 questions. What moments from the novel, whether it be through voice, detail, description, or emotion, brought you back to childhood? And what lessons can Margaret teach us no matter our age?
Ooh. The bringing back to childhood. When she talked about her mom doing her hair.
Aww.
I felt that.
Yeah.
Because I remember my mom rolling my hair or like we did like the rags in the hair at night to make it curly or braids to make it crimpy. And that wasn't a daily thing. But if I had a birthday party or a wedding or a performance, like I remember that. Yeah. That the hair was a big thing. That's probably the big one. And running through sprinklers, like having your neighbors just come knock on your door. That's how our neighborhood was. The moms didn't like text each other because that wasn't a thing.
Yep.
If you wanted to play with your neighbor, you walk over there and see if they were home, So just things like that made me feel nostalgic for childhood.
Yeah. I think for me, like the thing that brought me back, because obviously I just said I liked a lot of boys when I was a kid. I can remember being that age and have like, she talks about having a crush and like realizing that brother's friend is cute. And like, I can like vividly remember all like starting to feel all those feels and not really knowing what to do with that. Like, you're kind of like, okay, like it's just that sexual curiosity thing that they're talking about. And I can remember that because it's such an awkward time, but it's also so exciting.
Yeah.
Because it's all new and
she acknowledges that she thinks Moose is cute.
Yes.
But then immediately is like, oh, but I'm not going to put him on my boy list.
Right.
So sort of just
like a secret little,
like how from the beginning we question our decisions about that kind of stuff. And is this an acceptable person? Should I feel this way about this person? Like, when like at its core, attraction is just that.
Yeah.
Right. And you can choose what to do with it. But like, it's, because maybe sometimes it's not appropriate, but whatever.
Hello, our whole discussion on crushes whenever that happened.
Exactly. Oh gosh. And even at this age, like the age that's in the book,
crushes happen at all ages once your body starts feeling those feels.
And I liked, another childhood one was when she went to temple and then when she went to the church and described it, those feelings of like her just not like, it's like kind of boring.
Yeah.
And then she goes to the Christmas Eve one. She's like, do I have to talk to your minister? And Nancy's like, why would you talk to him? But the last few times she went to a religious thing, she had to meet them and they wanted her to come back and it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, I remember that too.
I know.
From church and stuff. And like just all of that. And I even remember in college going back home one weekend and I went to church with my parents and that was a whole thing. And my minister, and then even after I had my daughter, her and I went, and this was the last time we went to church together. And the minister like wanted to have her baptized, and it was a whole thing. And I remember just thinking, I'm here mainly like for my parents because they wanted us to come. I'm not here for any of this. So like, leave it be. And I think the sermon that day too was all about how Christians can't date non-Christians. And that bothered me. So it was a whole thing. It was like the slamming door for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that could have been just that environment that I was in. But I remember when she was talking about how she kind of felt at church, like, I was like, oh, what? She feels more when she's just communicating with God. And I felt that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I understand that. And the scene where she goes into the confessional, so funny. She follows Laura, and she's never been in a Catholic church.
Yeah.
So she goes into the box, and she's like, God, are you in here?
Hello?
And then, like, the priest starts talking to her, and she's like, what? And she realizes it's, like, a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that whole scene was really funny.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
Did they do that in the movie?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that part's in the movie.
I gotta look. Okay, so what is a lesson Margaret can teach us no matter our age? I like how she was unapologetic about her faith journey. Yeah, I agree.
Journey.
I agree.
And that applies to faith, but it applies really to anything that if you don't believe something or feel a certain way, even if everyone around you does, that's okay. You don't have to. Like the part where the teacher says, what do you hate? And she says, I hate religious holidays. And then he's like, hey, I want to talk to you. Why do you hate those? And her whole internal monologue's in the book. And she's like, oh, great. I don't want to tell him, blah, blah, blah. But then she ends up just going, well, I'm not religious and I just don't identify with them. And they kind of make me feel left out and blah, blah, blah. And then the teacher's like, okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, and even if he was like, well, I think that's bad, blah, blah, blah. She was still willing to just put her truth out there.
Yeah.
Especially at an age where conformity. So in a lot of ways, she's conforming in the book. Because that's appropriate for her age and all the things going on. And she just moved somewhere new, which adds a whole other level because you just want to be part. But with the religious stuff, she kind of stands her ground. Like even with her grandmother's like, oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. She's like, I just want to go check it out.
Yeah.
That's it. No other commitment, no other whatever. I want to go and see what it's all about.
Yeah. And
she kind of draws a line in the sand there.
Yeah.
And then when she kind of freaks out on her other grandparents and the parents, and she's like, why are you guys doing this? Blah, 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 blah. And that doesn't even, I like the way that's written, that the grandparents leave and it's a bad ending. Because you expect them all to be like, you're right. And let's come together.
But that's not realistic.
And the grandparents choose to leave. And
the dad's like, see?
And the dad even said something like, I wonder if they were planning New York the whole time. And the only reason they came was because it was convenient.
Yeah. We have had that in our lives. So,
and I thought that was really good because that something like that, which is a big deal to not have your grandparents want to be part of your life, or for her mom's case, her parents. And then when you do see them, it goes horribly wrong. But to kind of still be like, but they're not my people and it's okay.
Yeah, Troy and I both have, stuff in our families. And I can remember a therapist telling me one time, because it's hard not to let yourself get in like a zone. And she basically said, you just put your y'all's time and energy into the people under your own roof.
Yep, I love that.
And then anything else that comes along is great.
Right.
And just because people are blood related to you doesn't mean you have to do anything.
Right.
So, like for instance, in the book, those are her grandparents, but they are not accepting of the way that they're parenting. They are not trying to overcome that to still be a part of the granddaughter's life. And that's their choice. And you have to just let them have that.
Yes.
And I think her parents do that, but it's like, her mom still has that small hope. Like,
I know.
Cause it's hard to be like,
but that's the nuance, right?
Correct.
That is how she would probably feel.
Because you still do hold on to the what if.
And she even says, I want them to come see that I've done well without them.
Right.
And that's human nature.
Absolutely.
And then when you get that thing, you're like, ugh, this feels kind of shallow and empty. Like, I was never doing this for them. I've always been doing this for me.
I don't need their approval. Yeah.
Totally. Mm-hmm. Totally agree with that. What did I have here? Oh, I saw this in your notes too, how they only discuss 2 religions.
Yes.
But I mean, I guess you kind of have to because of those contexts. But when she was like, I need to know if I'm going to the YMCA or the Jewish Community Center or whatever. But I was like, well, that's kind of binary on religions too. Yeah. But I mean, in this, it was about her life.
Right.
And her experiences.
Right. And for her, those were the 2 dynamics at play.
Yeah. Which totally makes sense. Yeah. And what do you think, Margaret, like what lessons can she teach us today?
I mean, I agree with you on all of that. And I think too, I appreciate just the direct discussion of girls' bodies and changing and realizing that girls are sexual beings too, that have a coming of age just like boys do, and they start having, their feelings. And I really do think that like talking about periods directly like that, I like the sneak peek into girls' brains because I don't think we're given enough.
Agree.
That is valid. Now, granted, this is very particular to a certain class, a certain gender identity, a certain, I get that, certain circumstances. But I do like that. I think again, I've said this multiple times, is I think there's a reason why people are still reading this book. And something else I saw in the Judy documentary, people have written her letters over the years about how much they appreciated this book.
Good.
And she has saved a lot of them. She wrote back to a lot of them.
Wow.
This one girl in the documentary, I want you to watch this, I won't say too much, started writing to her, and they kept a companionship over letters for like years.
That's awesome.
And she said she started writing to Judy Blume kind of the way Margaret did to God.
Yeah. That's really cool.
I know.
That is really cool.
I know.
Because then that makes, I don't think we've used this phrase in talking about her talking to God in this episode, but God's kind of her safe place.
Yeah.
And so for this person, Judy Blume's sort of her safe place, which she doesn't know her personally, but in the writing, you can kind of feel that, that this is a person talking about things directly without shame, without whatever. And therefore, maybe I can do the same thing with that person, which I think we could all strive to be.
Yeah.
Be our safe places.
I agree. And I think, we're running out of time.
Oh, we are.
I think that's so good for our first book. So our next book is Flowers in the Attic.
Yes.
And if you've never read it, you're going to be like, why did y'all pick this?
Oh, I cannot wait. I've never read it.
Oh boy.
I wanted to finish this one and this discussion so nothing like overlapped in my brain. But at least in going live, we're going to have 3 weeks between for the books, and then 3 weeks between for the movies offset. So I don't think it'll be 3 weeks before we record it necessarily, but I'm ready to like toggle now.
Oh, it's very different.
Oh, I can't wait.
It's very different. I'm not saying a word. I haven't read it. I haven't read it since I read it as a younger person. Okay. And I'm ready to just be like, oh my God.
I love it. Okay, good. Let's do it. And we got a few more good ones on the list.
Yeah, we do. We do. Check our list out on socials, everyone. Read along.
Yep. And welcome to our Xennial Girl Summer.
Woo! Official. Give me a Zima with a Jolly Rancher.
I thought you were going to start spelling. Give me an X. Give me an E. I was like, uh-oh.
No, Xennial Girl Summer. Pass the sun in.
Sun in and Zima. That's it. And books. and movies.
All right.
We'll see you next time, guys.
Bye.
Bye.